Why didn't it work out for Jarrett Guarantano at Tennessee? Hi, everybody. I'm Marky Billson. And with Jarrett Guarantano, his announcement that he was going to transfer from Tennessee following the Vols' 34-13 loss last Saturday to the Texas A&M Aggies, very unsurprising turn of events when you think about it, but it leads one to this question. Has there ever been a 4-year starting quarterback in major college football that has been less impressive than Jarrett Guarantano? Now, when you look at his career totals at Tennessee as a 4-year starter, they're really not that bad. Take, for instance, a 38-17 touchdown interception ratio. Not bad. But, that did come a little bit from being a dink and dunker. And stats don't always tell the whole story. Like his lollipop arm, or his inability to look off, or how the first image that a lot of Tennessee fans had of Jarrett Guarantano was pouting on the sidelines in 2017 against Georgia Tech that he didn't start the game. Or how about in that infamous 2017 season, the Volunteers went 15 straight quarters without scoring an offensive touchdown. Guarantano was the quarterback for 10 of those 15 quarters. He quit being a scrambler, and he was advertised as a dual-threat quarterback. Now, I think that has something to do with Jeremy Pruitt. And by the way, I'm not a huge fan of the running quarterback, but it changed his game and didn't ever look like he was able to adapt. Jarrett Guarantano came into 2019, as the solid starting quarterback, according to Jeremy Pruitt for the Vols. By the 5th game, he was benched. Threw 4 interceptions this year. That's not that many. 3 of them were returned for touchdowns. That's a lot. I think that Guarantano is a poster child of 2 things that I really believe in. One, throw away recruiting rankings. Look, you're talking to a guy here who used to write for Rivals, who used to write for Scout. Okay, you don't know a recruiting rating until 4 years after the fact. This is like a preseason top 25 when you get a recruiting ranking, and I may be charitable when I even say that. But yes, Jarrett Guarantano came to Tennessee, rated higher than Jalen Hurts as a dual-threat quarterback. How'd that work out? I think the recruitniks got that one wrong. Don't you? Yet we go into, third best, dual-threat quarterback coming to Tennessee. Wow! And then he doesn't set the world on fire, but he puts up decent numbers. We think he's a failure. It's one of the problems with recruiting rankings. The other thing, though, is he was poorly coached. And let's just begin with Butch Jones. He was Butch Jones' prize prospect. Jones, when he was a grad assistant in the early 90s, coached his father at Rutgers. So you can see the connection on why Guarantano would come from New Jersey to Tennessee. It makes a lot of sense. But Butch Jones, after redshirting him in 2016, no surprise there, he wasn't going to beat out Josh Dobbs, then turned to Quentin Dormady to start against Georgia Tech. And really, okay. Dormady is the more experienced player. Look, I get it. I'm not saying that's a bad move. What is a bad move is the way that Jones handled it. He did not name a starting quarterback until the day of the game. How can either quarterback be thought of by their team as a leader if it's a game time decision on who's going to lead them? And then you can certainly understand this from Guarantano's standpoint. He goes to that game thinking, I'm going to be the starting quarterback of the Tennessee Volunteers. Jarrett, can I have a word with you? Yeah, we're going to go with Dormady. He has a right to be disappointed. He didn't know where he stood. And that does lead to pouting on the sideline, rightly or wrongly. But the thing is, Jeremy Pruitt never learned from Butch Jones' mistakes. How many times have we seen during Pruitt's career, it's been the standard, not giving any information out. a depth chart with this guy could start or this person could start. This player could start at multiple positions, but usually quarterback. By the way, the Texas A&M depth chart, I said this before, listed a kicker who is no longer on the team as the starting kicker. Yeah, look through the notes for the Texas A&M game. They actually have Brent Somaglia, who left the team earlier, as the starting kicker. They also had Jarrett Guarantano listed as one of the starting quarterback possibilities. Everybody knew Guarantano was not going to start against Texas A&M. Now, that being said, you had a situation where Guarantano could never know where he stood then, and it's a little surprising because he started basically all of his sophomore season, when if there was ever a year where it would be a good idea to bench him, that would have been it. Look, Keller Chryst was more of a drop-back passer. He was good enough to get a tryout with the Pittsburgh Steelers. He came from a quarterback family, the Chrysts, who, of course, his uncle is the head coach at Wisconsin. He came from a pretty good quarterback school in Stanford, which in their history has had 3 quarterbacks drafted number 1 overall in the NFL draft: Jim Plunkett, John Elway, and Andrew Luck. That said, here we have Chryst, who is, again, not the starter, and even as Guarantano shows that he's not really that ready to throw the ball down the field and has a lack of arm strength, and even though the Vols seem to want to play more that drop-back quarterback offense, they rarely turn to Chryst that year. Case in point, Vanderbilt game. Season finale, Chryst last college game, they're 5-6. Gotta beat Vandy to make a bowl game. And Chryst doesn't even get in until the game is decided. Now, that's just ridiculous. But yeah, after that, you'd think, okay, Guarantano's going to be the quarterback for the next 2 years. His position is said to be solid going into 2019. And by the 5th game, he's on the bench. So you didn't start the more experienced quarterback, but you did start raw rookies when you didn't like Jarrett Guarantano. There's a lot of problems with how Guarantano was handled, but it's just the problems of Jeremy Pruitt's coaching. As I said, not naming starters, so you don't know where they stand. Even if you want to make the argument that we don't know if maybe the players themselves actually know who is going to start ahead of time, but you're just not releasing that to the media, then you're being disingenuous to the media and therefore the fan base. You're basically being dishonest. And you're saying privately you're the starter, but you're not saying it publicly. That isn't really a strong endorsement. So, you're not going to keep the other team guessing. It means nothing. I mean, it's about what you do. It's not what the other team does. Come on, let's face that fact. Old Chuck Noll right there. You look at some of the other things that happened with Jarrett Guarantano. In addition to the fact that he just never knew where he stood, when did we ever hear him at the podium? Never had a chance to really know what he was or who he was. He was a guy who graduated early or graduated on time. That's saying something. But yet, face of the football team as the quarterback? When was he ever quoted? Again, Pruitt keeping the media away from his team. And that doesn't bode well for future professional ranks. I mean, in the pros, you got to be able to talk to the media. You don't want to have a Ryan Leaf situation where the QB is screaming at the media. You've got to give him a little bit of a background in media relations. That's what part of being a college quarterback at Tennessee should be about. But it isn't. Not at Tennessee. And so all you really knew about Guarantano's personality was the pouting on the sideline way back in 2017. When he would start, Pruitt would just say, he gives us the best chance to win. But he would never tell us why he gave the Vols the best chance to win. What was Jarrett Guarantano's superior skill set? You should be able to tell us this. And then we just don't believe you when that's the answer that you give. By the time Pruitt unprofessionally grabbed a hold of Jarrett Guarantano's face mask after Guarantano, he went rogue. He called an audible at the goal line against Alabama with the game on the line and fumbled the ball away, and Alabama picked it up and ran it in 100 yards for a touchdown and sank the Vols and all this. And we understand why Pruitt would be angry, but the grabbing of the face mask, that meant that Guarantano was always going to be a punching bag at Tennessee. And you do something like that publicly, you're humiliating your quarterback. And as was the case with Guarantano, you generally do not repair the relationship from that move, and you don't get over it. I'd mentioned Chuck Noll being the old Steelers fan here. Terry Bradshaw has never forgiven Chuck Noll for once grabbing a hold of his face mask and embarrassing him in front of thousands of people. So remember that. There have been 5 quarterbacks at Tennessee that have played all 4 years they were part of the program. Peyton Manning, Casey Clausen, Eric Ainge, Josh Dobbs, Jarrett Guarantano. Guarantano is always going to be that one guy out of that list that you just aren't going to be able to remember. And the thing is, he's always going to be the worst 4-year starter at Tennessee. The least popular 4-year starter at Tennessee, because it's really hard to believe that you're going to have a quarterback come in and post a worse one-loss record than Guarantano's 13-20. Maybe, look, as down as the Vols are, maybe that will happen and such. But, even a losing program, 13-20, is not a good record. And heck, the Vols have had 8 losing seasons the last 13 seasons, so you can't call them elite anymore. They are a losing program, but they're not in the, Rice mentality or something like that. But even at a place like a Rice, 13-20 would be viewed by the Owls fans as not so good. And so at a program that 22 years off a national title, a lot of fans can still remember it, 13-20 is just not going to be accepted. Now, Guarantano, there's a speculation where he'll go. Butch Jones just got hired as a head coach at Arkansas State. What about that? Well, Jones has a couple of underclassmen with the Red Wolves. Plus, I really think, even with the family ties, after the 2017 season, how popular is Butch Jones with his players? Really? Playing Brett Kendrick with a concussion, allegedly. Is that the guy you want to play for? Remember Juan Jennings, just was, he got kicked off the team, actually, for speaking out against Butch Jones and all that. I thought that was preposterous at the time because Jennings was saying something that everyone in the fan base was thinking at the time. But it happened. I just don't think that Jones is all that popular with the players that played for him back in 2017. Others have said Guarantano might be looking at the NFL draft. If he is, he's delusional. Okay, I said he's not ready for the NFL. That's for sure. Now, Rutgers, which was in the midst for recruiting him initially, and his father played at Rutgers under Butch Jones, those many years ago, as mentioned before. They were unsettled at quarterback, so possibly Greg Schiano. That might be a place. But I'm just speculating. It is total speculation. But you know what isn't speculative? It's to suggest that if and where Guarantano plays next, he'll receive better coaching. Folks, I'm Marky Billson. If you like what I have to say, then I ask that you hit the like button on YouTube and be one of my subscribers. Would love to have you aboard. When it comes to honest commentary about the Tennessee Volunteers, I'm the guy that gives it to you. This isn't fanboy commentary. This is a former newspaperman. This is a guy who has covered the NFL and Major League Baseball and Major College Football and understands the journalistic principles of the media form, and at least tries to hold up to them and give them to you. And it's a perspective that really isn't given all that much to the teams around East Tennessee. That's what I give to you. So until next time, I'm Marky Billson.